kind of a beginner's era, I guess I want to say, a lot of people will have an aim point maybe a half inch away or 2 inches away, a long distance from where their gun's printed. Where you might be aiming at 6 o'clock in the mothball and your gun's printing at 11 o'clock up on the 9 ring. Okay? When I first started shooting, I would aim at 6 o'clock in the mothball and have my gun print up at 12 o'clock. I want to advocate to you guys that get your gun to print right at or below your aim point. Now you'll say, well, Jack, wait, the internet says don't shoot out your aim point. I don't want to shoot out my aim point. I'm going to tell you guys this. Don't worry about it. If you're aiming that fine to try to get that precise aim, someone's getting 2 or 3 shots downrange in that condition while you're trying to be super finite. When the gun's tuned, the bullet's nowhere to go. I'm not advocating that you want to blindly reposition the gun back to battery and have it somewhere far, but I'm saying that we're shooting aggregates and grand aggregates, not groups. We've got to get away from the group thinking. I'll take a 180 at 100 yards every time instead of getting 4 down into 120 and really trying to sweat that aim point, or maybe that condition goes away and I end up with a 280 because I had to finish in the reverse. So if you do have your gun print at the aim point, another major benefit is at some point of this match coming up, you will have to finish probably in a reverse. I want to take all the stress I can away from making calculations of where I need to hold in a reverse, whereby if I know I've got to hold into the condition because I've got to finish in a reverse, I don't want to also have to add a component of vertical because my group is printing a half inch or an inch away from my aim point. It is never going to help you to have to add that computation into your equation. Okay? So I would recommend get your gun to print at your aim point or very close to it. When you get to the line tomorrow morning or with the bag guns on Wednesday, what I do, even though I had the gun zeroed, Tuesday night, get the scope caps off. I want my gun, and it will change with light. Sometimes your gun starts printing high in the morning. Anybody ever run into that? It's a little darker. And you're like, what happened? Last night it was printing right where I wanted. When it's darker out, your bullet impact will climb because of optical aberration. When it gets real bright out, lights up, sights up. That's what the high power guys say. All of a sudden, you're going to start holding low. Some of the greatest things you can learn is not even firing a shot, but sit behind your railgun while that light changes. It's amazing. You'll see the crosshairs climb when it gets bright on your target and start dropping. When the wind blows with mirage, your crosshairs will move with the wind. And you'll wonder, how the heck did we shoot so good with bag gun? With this light change. It really is something to see.
So you're not concerned about the tammering. You always hear about the measurements not being quite as good if you're hammering around the 10 ring. So
if it's in your head that cutting the 10 ring is going to add to your measurement, either practice harder to shoot in the middle of the mothball and pinwheel it to where you don't hit the 10 ring, or find somewhere else. Honestly, I'm more worried about getting my aim point close. If you're more comfortable bracketing, say, a 9 ring or 8 ring with a smaller line, the 9/8 ring versus the mothball ring, do what's good for you. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you'd be really hard pressed to say I lost the 3 guns because my groups were cutting across the mothball.
a little sweat.
Yeah, so don't worry about that type of stuff.
Well, where's your point of it?
I hold at 6 o'clock on the mothball. Okay?
Where do you put your crosser?
Right at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Really? Top or bottom?
Oh, right at 6 o'clock on the mothball. Are we going to have a problem here? I want the blackboards clean when we're done.
No more beer for you.
How's your beer doing?
Bagel, sandwich corn.
That was the most fun.
You have to forgive Dave. He and his father used to walk to school together.
Had to show him the way.
All right.
course of the day, here's some things that I do and I think are really going to find helpful. In the morning, you look at the spotting scope at the bag guns. A lot of times you see ugly groups, people like their guns out of tune. Anybody ever have that first thing in the morning? It's like, man, the gun was working last night at 6 o'clock and now it's just shooting terrible. And you don't do anything with the load. You stay with your same load, whatever that is. And all of a sudden, match 3 or 4, your gun went from shooting bad. All of a sudden, things come in. What happened? How did the gun go from being out of tune to in tune? Here's what's going on, gang. Your powder's heavier in the morning than it is as it warms up. We throw by volume, if you're using a powder measure, and we burn by weight. I haven't weighed powder in years. I got a bunch of scales at home, and when we want one, I'll give you a scale. I know the powder is going to be 2 to 3 tenths or more heavy in the morning. Okay? If a scale is good for you and you want to use it, by all means. I'm going to go by how my group forms and how the bullet holes look to determine what I need to do with the load. And we'll talk about that to help you understand what I'm looking at. Scales and everything are great, and yes, you want to maintain maybe the same weight, but your powder's heavy in the morning, and as it warms up, it swells and it gets lighter. We're throwing by volume, we're getting less weight because the powder is bigger, okay? And what's going to happen is you're going to need to go up. What I'll do, I will take up a couple different loads up in the morning. And a lot of times, I mean, you feel the air a lot of times in the morning that it's almost damp. That's pressure your bullet's running into. And a lot of times, if you took that load that worked at night in the morning, you're way too hot. I'm going to take up a load that's at least a number lower. And what I want to do is one of two things. Either I'm going to hit that node because that powder's heavier, or I want to prove to myself, all right, maybe that's too light. Okay, one of the two things are going to happen. More times than not, I drop my powder down. I start off at 100 or 200 with a good group because my gun's not bucking, it's not out of tune. Pay attention to the recoil of your rifle. Ever find that sometimes it's hard to get back on target? Okay? A lot of times, that's the rifle telling you that it's out of tune, where it's recoiling, funny, and coming out of the bags at an angle instead of straight back and smooth. So just something to pay attention to. Another thing too, gang, is that when I'm testing my loads, here's a great strategy for you. We get 3 extra minutes at every match the first group of the day, right? We're able to warm up. Take advantage of that extra 3 minutes. There's 2 things that you want to do. The first match of the day, you want to test groups and not shoot sighters. Okay? What I mean by that is I have a right bowl and a left bowl, and I've also got the middle sighter. Okay? I'm going to test maybe a lighter load the first thing in the morning to see how it's going to shoot. How do you know if it's tuned? If you can't put 3 shots at 100 yards when you have a decent gun into the same hole or a bullet and a half or 150 group, your gun is not shooting. Now, there's 2 things I want you guys to remember. We take way too much credit when the guns are tuned and when they're working. And we also take too much credit when things are not working. We blame ourselves. When you look out and you say, I hit those conditions, you know, that condition was there and the gun just moved around, don't blame yourself. The load is just not right. So I'm going to try a light, maybe a medium, and a hotter load in that 3 minutes. Just 3 shots, just to give me an idea. And if I have like one load, that 2 shots, I've got paper between it, I don't need to shoot that 3rd shot to try to make that group smaller. Okay? So my first match of the day, I'm testing loads, not necessarily sighters per se. I want to get the load right. All right? On my next match, I may be testing condition. All right? Don't shoot groups on your sighter. Test the condition. And here's just something that makes good sense. I'll share with you guys. You've got a right bowl and a left bowl. If I've got wind coming on Wednesday morning from, say, 9 o'clock, I want to shoot my left bowl. If I've got a red condition, okay, that's coming out of 3 o'clock, shoot the rifle. I want the group to print always towards the middle of the paper. And I always want to reference, I don't want to have to remember, was that rifle a green condition or red condition? All right? It's just an easy reference. And if I find I want to shoot a 4 o'clock condition on the range, okay, have one shot where it's really benign and wait till it picks up in that red condition. Now I've got, in red condition, 2 different impact points. Now I know that if I'm starting my group and I'm forced to shoot in a harder push, I've got a reference. What's it going to do? It's going to hit out towards the 9 ring. So it's something that I can refer to. Okay? Everybody get that? Does that make sense? All right. I love Ali Huber to death. Take shoot next to him and Lee. I mean, they might as well have a bandolero of ammo. They just pound the cider, and I don't know how they see or learn anything, but you know, it's work for them. I try not to shoot so many ciders. I can't remember what the ciders I shot in the condition. Okay? Have a purpose for every shot you shoot on the cider. And here's the other thing. When you're shooting, try to call your shot. Before you pull that trigger, where is that bullet going to hit? Now, that's going to be an acquired skill, but pretty soon, if your gun's working and you're working where you're seeing that condition, within a half a bullet at 100 yards, you'll be able to call where that bullet should be. Okay? A couple other things here. Again, we talked about shooting your sighters before you go to your record target. I hate, when I'm up at the record target, going back to the sighter. A lot of times, we've all been there, on the sighter, where does it go? It would have went in the groove. You go up to the record, now that changed, okay? Ultimately, you have to take that leap of faith on the record and pull that trigger. I would rather do my sighter work maybe before I go to that record and test conditions. And when I'm up on record, I've got a reference where that's printed, okay? Now, everybody says, you know, what's your secret? Or tell me a secret. All right, here's a couple things. Say